Ryan, what's going on? Welcome to Let's Talk About It, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Real excited to be here.
I'm happy you're here, man.
Yeah.
So, you cover, what is it, West New Jersey, right? Mostly? Northwest? How's that considered, right? South, Northwest? What is it?
I don't know what you consider. So I cover primarily Mars and Somerset counties are kind of my main epicenters, and then parts of western Essex County.
Okay.
More so. I'll branch out from there from time to time, but yeah, I guess you would call it, I don't know, too far west, because then too far west you start getting out by Pennsylvania.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's like by 78, I think. Is it 70? Because 78 is considered west. Well, where I'm at, right? I'm in Union County, but I'm in the New Providence, Summer area. That's considered Central West New Jersey, actually.
Yeah, visiting, yeah.
Yeah. I think, like, for me, when I'm going south, right, I'm thinking anything past 123 off the Parkway, I'm like, that's South Jersey.
That's South Jersey, yeah.
But people are like, no, I mean, you can go as far as Trenton. It's considered
Right.
Central Jersey, right?
Yeah, most people would consider it northern New Jersey, but I know, like, then you start dealing with people in Bergen County, like, well, no, I'm north New Jersey.
Yeah,
I'm like, all right. There's a lot of, as small as New Jersey is, there's
Right.
a lot of different areas, even within the segments of New Jersey.
You get into that conversation, you're like, all right, it doesn't matter. Do you want a house or what? Because I can help you. That's what it boils
Call
down
me
to.
and we'll go from there.
We'll go from there, right? So, Ryan, you got what I like about what you got going on, you do this thing called Market Update, right?
Yeah.
You provide through social platforms what's going on and what are some of the things that are happening in the real estate market. But to say that, you do also are part of a group,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it, man. How did the group start, and what do you see? What do you see happening now versus what took place in the past?
Right. So yeah, we've got a small team.
Right.
It all started back before So I'll go back to the real beginning. I'm third generation real estate. My grandfather had a real estate brokerage.
Okay.
In the Morristown area. He had 5 different offices.
5.
He sold. That's how we ended up at Coldwell Banker. So he sold his company to Schlott Realtors, which was big back in the day, and then he sold his company. Dick Schlott sold his company to Coldwell Banker. Back when Coldwell Banker was buying a lot of the local brokerages.
Right.
So at the time, my father was working for that brokerage, so that's how we got into Coldwell Banker. My mother got into the business, I don't know, when I was younger, probably in middle school. And then out of college, I was working in public accounting.
Right.
I was trying to avoid the family business at all costs.
It drags you in somehow, right?
I was interested in real estate itself, but I was, like any kid, I'm like, all right, whatever my parents are doing, I'm going to try to do something better.
Right.
And I was working in accounting, living in Manhattan, and I was just always fascinated with real estate. At the time, Manhattan real estate, and I found accounting really boring.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the technicality of accounting, when I was in school. But then when you get into the day to day, it was a lot of staring at computers and spreadsheets.
Looking at that computer screen, like, oh, really?
It just turns your brain into mush.
Right.
And I always enjoyed real estate, and so I remember one day, my wife and I were living together, but we weren't married yet, and saying to her, complaining about my career in accounting. And she's like, well, what do you really want to be doing? I was like, well, if I had a bunch of money saved up, I'd get into real estate. But, like, it's hard to get into the business. Like, it's a lot of upfront costs and risk and whatnot.
Right.
And, we were in our mid-20s at the time. And she said, why do you need a bunch of money saved up? She goes, half our friends still live at home with their parents. Worst case scenario, you lose everything, which isn't that much to begin with at the time.
You have a zero-sum game, right?
Yeah, you're like, not married, no kids. She's like, worst case scenario, we end up where most of our friends are to begin with.
Right.
So that's when I got into real estate. Worked in Manhattan real estate for about a year.
Hawken Group, right?
So I was with City Habitats, which was a part of the Corcoran Group. Now they're all under one brand.
Right.
And it's a tough business to get into,
Right.
Especially in Manhattan. There's a lot of really good competition, a lot of talented people working in the business. And from the beginning, my mother was like, I'm really busy. Let's team up. And I forget about it. New Jersey's boring, and I don't want to work with you.
So you were being stubborn.
Yeah, I was like, no, I don't want to work. I didn't want to work in real estate. I want to work in Manhattan real estate.
Right.
Very at the time, I thought they were.
It's different, right?
At the time, I thought they were very.
Lots
different.
of traffic lights, lots of grass.
Yeah. And then I thought, oh, I've got the family benefit to help me out, and my father's just like, I can't help you in Manhattan. It's totally different.
Right,
Now
right.
that I'm in New Jersey, I realize it's mostly the same thing. There's some differences. So finally, after asking me a few times, we, put together a proposal, and her and I ended up partnering up.
Okay.
Initially, my intention was to live in Manhattan and reverse commute. I
Right.
learned very quickly that was unrealistic when you work 24/7 in this business.
Right.
And then back in 2020, when COVID hit, my father, who had been working in management at Coldwell Banker for ages, he came to us and wanted to join the team, and I said absolutely not. I said we don't need another agent. There's enough of us. We don't need to be having. He said no, I don't really want to be an agent. I've been doing management for a while. I want to work as an admin, and I want to. I want you to deal with all the problems, and I want to deal with all the.
You want to be behind the scenes.
He goes, I want to run around, meet inspectors, put up signs, file stuff, and then when someone calls and yelling, I hand the phone to you.
Okay.
So we've got a really great. It took a lot of years to figure out kind of where we fit in the mix with each
Right.
other. There's a lot of competition
Right.
within the team.
It's a good thing.
It was good, but it was kind of everybody was trying to outdo each other for a while,
Right.
and now we've kind of hit a real nice stride of understanding what our roles are, what our strengths are, and
Right.
before it was kind of we would all be jumping at each other to be like, I'm going to do that first, otherwise you're going to do it and take the credit, and now it's kind of like, oh hey, no, this is your thing.
Right. Right.
Oh,
Okay.
they asked me this.
Right,
I'm telling
right.
them to call you because you're
Okay.
better at this, and vice versa.
Right. So there's more control.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
There's
important.
There's more structure. To
Right.
it.
You guys identified with your weaknesses and strengths, and you said, okay, this is what we're gonna do, and if we do it this way, we're gonna grow the team as big as we can. Right.
And it took some time to realize we're not in competition with each other. We're all working together towards the
Right.
same goal.
Okay.
So.
So Thanksgiving and Christmas can be interesting.
Oh, there's
conversations.
always real estate talk. There's never a break from real estate
Right,
talk. But
right.
I grew up in a house like that, so
Okay.
I'm used to it. Took my wife some time to get used to, but I'm used to it.
You brought into it. Well, she brought into it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, she's the one with the idea. She's like, yo, let's move back. Like, let's make sense about this.
Yeah.
The good thing about it, so don't downplay like your account. You have a CPA, man. Like that,
Yeah.
that exam is not easy, man.
No,
So,
Made the real estate exam look like cake, though.
Yeah. Well, that one, right? You'd be surprised how many people pass it, and still to this day, still ask you the questions like, is this really, you didn't know about this on the
Yeah,
exam?
yeah. I
Right?
tell my clients, I'm like, listen, if your realtor tells you they had a tough time passing the exam, like there's a pause right there.
Yeah, we're not gonna go there, but it's what it is. So that's kind of cool, right? So and plus you went to Northwestern, right?
Northeastern.
Northeastern,
Very
one in
different
Boston.
college. Northeastern and Boston.
Boston, right?
So
yeah.
I went to Northeastern, studied both a dual major, both accounting and marketing.
And marketing, okay.
Yeah.
So this is why you do a good job with the whole marketing.
So I had a great love for marketing, but when I graduated, plain and simple, it's just easier to find a job in accounting. So I ended up
Okay.
in accounting, even though I really, really loved, a lot of the marketing side
Right.
a lot more.
Well, you need marketing to grow your business in real estate
Yeah.
anyway, right? So
Yeah.
you need to, that if you don't know what to do with that, then I think it's a challenge to grow your business if you don't have a marketing skill.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I love working in real estate
Right.
because all of my different experiences and backgrounds really kind of come together.
Right.
I would say I use more of my accounting education in real estate than I did when I was working in accounting.
Okay.
Same goes. I mean, I've worked with startup businesses in the past. I've worked in construction. I've worked in graphic design and film production. And so, I mean, what I love about real estate is I'm able to do so many of these things that I've done in the past, and
Right. Well, the what I like, going back to your accounting background, right? It's kind of cool because sometimes someone will say, well, what's the square footage? This is how much they're getting per square foot.
Right.
You can just be like off the top of your head, be like, oh, you only get this much. This is how much is a square foot. So that's a good skill. Right?
It's something I forget. Number one, if you've ever met an accountant, accountants like to talk in spreadsheets.
Right.
So I love when I work with finance and accounting clients, because I'll just put together a spreadsheet and send it to them and break things down, and it's like.
You still use spreadsheets?
I love spreadsheets. I use spreadsheets for everything, and it's funny because when I talk to realtors, like if you've ever been to any of these like real estate roundtables and panels and stuff, without fail, you'll get somebody in the audience when it's the Q&A time. What CRM do you use?
Right.
And everybody, I think everybody gets way too hung up on that stuff. But and I mean, keep in mind, like I worked deep dive in spreadsheets
Right.
years.
So you know the pivot tables, you know all that stuff.
Yeah, I can do all kinds of crazy things with the spreadsheets.
Right.
But you know, my spreadsheets are my best CRM and my best file management and tracking systems, because when you really know how to use spreadsheets,
Right.
you can customize them
Right.
so many different ways.
And that's what a CRM is. It's just it just looks
organizing.
prettier. Yeah, it's organizing what you're trying to put into it,
Yeah.
right? And it's only as good as what you put, the information you put into it.
Right. So I'm crazy organized. I'm obsessed with organization.
Okay.
Getting the rest of the team on board with all my systems
Right.
took some time. Still is sometimes a little bit of a challenge, but I'm obsessed with like systems and organization.
Right.
'Cause, you know, when I first teamed up with my mother, one of the biggest challenges we had working as a team is she had a lot of stuff in her head.
Right.
And I said, first of all, we can't, like, that can't work.
Right.
Because we need to be a team. We need to be able to go into the file. But and I said, on top of that, our goal is to grow.
Right.
And I don't care how smart you are, how good of a memory you have.
Right.
Everybody's going to get to a point where they grow their business, you know, to an extent where you can't keep it all in your head.
Right. Which is, it makes sense. I mean, if you want to reference something, it's good to have it. It's good to have it someplace where you can go back and reference it, because like you said, you will forget at times.
Oh yeah. And my systems are like, you know, I've had someone, you know, someone from corporate say, hey, I've got a friend, I want to refer them to you. And as I'm on the phone with them, they're like, here's their name, here's their email address. And within seconds, I just said, oh yeah, that person came into my open house 6 years ago at this address. And they're like, how'd you know? I'm like, it's all my systems. I track it all.
Right.
And it really, it helps me to focus on the things that are important rather than, you know, running around trying to find things. And, you know, if you have all the data there, you can really make your decisions.
Yeah,
my job is to advise and analyze and you know, not to sit around pushing paper and looking for things.
Right. So how's that? I mean, Coldwell Banker, right? Yeah. Growing firm.
Yeah.
Very. They're popular. They do what they do best, right? How has that been? You know, I see we met when I was prior to where I am now. We met at the headquarters in, was it Madison, right?
Madison,
right?
Yeah.
Now, how is that? Now, have you ever spoken on a panel on some of these discussions on what are some of the trending things that are happening in real estate?
Oh yeah. Lots of
Lots of
panels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So again, now what is it like now? Like being part of Coldwell, like you're all in, and how has that been a change? Right?
Yeah. So at first I was very reluctant.
Okay.
You know, I've worked having a family where my father was a manager. He drank the Kool-Aid really hard, and I used to always give him a hard time. You know, about questioning everything. I question everything.
Right.
You know, it's not, this is the way to do it. Why? Is there a better way?
Okay.
So it took me some time to really kind of buy into the
Coldwell Banker.
the corporate culture,
Right.
just because that was against my nature.
Because you're a boutique person, right?
Well, it was very much, I'm going to do, that's great that I'm part of Coldwell Banker. I'm an independent contractor. I work for my clients.
Right.
You know, I'm not an employee of the company.
Right.
So like, why should I go to this and why should I go to that?
Right.
And then it took me some time to really understand the value in having, and really, in my opinion, one of the biggest values of being in a company like Coldwell Banker, which is the world's largest real estate brokerage, is more than anything else, the network.
Right.
There's just so many top agents throughout the world that are part of this network.
Right.
And that's, I started going to all the conferences. I used to get, I'd win an award and I get invited to the awards dinner. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
My corporate days are over. Do I really have to go to some fancy dinner with a bunch of people and make small talk? But after a while, I realized, first of all, once I started making these connections, I started making friends with people. So I started enjoying them more. But the amount of, not only referring business back and forth with other agents, but the amount of sharing of ideas.
Right.
Once I realized the opportunity there, I kind of jumped all in on that, because, a Coldwell Banker can be very cutting edge and ahead of the game on a lot of stuff. But, Coldwell Banker's a big company. And even the smaller brokerages, it's, they're only going to be so cutting edge. And I feel like, and as a corporate culture, they also have to, when they train to the masses.
Right.
They're not training me, they're putting together trainings and advice and panels and whatnot that are relevant to the most amount of agents.
I've seen a lot of things happening. They're doing it every day. You see new things happening, especially I see Lindsay on the forefront talking about what's happening on the technology side of the business.
Oh yeah, and her and I chat a lot offline too.
Yeah, Lindsay, she's all over it, right?
Yeah.
She's making sure that whatever is needed, whatever tools you guys have, she's providing that.
Yeah.
And recently she was on what was it?
Inman,
right?
Yeah.
She was talking, she got rewarded for the work she's put into it, right?
Yeah.
So kudos to her on that.
And I love having access to that corporate team.
Right.
I mean, they're right down the street in Madison.
Right.
Growing up with the company, I happen to know a lot of the corporate team.
Okay.
It's just really nice. But not only do I have that relationship with them because of my history with the company, but I'm very blunt with them.
Right.
I'll reach out to them on their personal cell phone numbers. I'll call them, shoot them a text. Hey, we've got this program. I hate it. Right. This needs improvement, or we need to think somewhere else, or like, hey, here's some ideas that I've been working on. Like, we need to talk about this.
Right.
This is benefiting me. I think it'd benefit the whole company.
Well, it makes sense if the numbers you're bringing in, they're gonna have to listen to you. Right?
Well, I'm not,
let's talk about that, right?
And I'm not shy about it.
Right.
And I think it's nice that I've developed the relationships with a lot of our corporate team over the years, where I think there's a mutual respect that we have, where they know if they want an honest opinion, they come to me. I'm not gonna butter anybody up, sugarcoat it.
I hear you. So two good guys I know over there, Irvin Cham.
Yeah, Irvin's a great guy.
And Mike Panisi, right?
Yeah.
And so these guys are doing a lot of different things to help incorporate that brand of CB. That's good stuff. Yeah. Recently, I saw you talk about Clear Incorporation. What is that?
So I was kind of avoiding the topic for a while.
Okay.
Because honestly, when it first started coming up in the news, I felt like it was very much more of a West Coast topic.
Right.
While it affects the whole country, I feel like it was only really been an issue on the West Coast. I was like, why is this all of a sudden in the news? No one around here was really talking about it.
Right.
But I started seeing it come up more in conversations because kind of our corporate was kind of putting out a narrative more so. And I'm like, guys, like you think that this is a national thing. It's really a West Coast thing. But just like with drinking the Kool-Aid, it was, hey, you know what? It is kind of starting to creep into the East Coast and whatnot. So Clear Cooperation, and I'm going to try to stay high level, number one, because I don't want to try to get into too much detail and botch it, because I don't know all the ins and outs. But it's on a high level, Clear Cooperation essentially says that if you're a licensed real estate agent that's a member of the MLS and the board, if you list a house, you have to put it on the MLS and you have to share it and cooperate with everybody. Right. So in its essence, it makes a whole lot of sense. It's, maximum exposure. The last thing you want is, you want to be sharing that and cooperating. It's usually in the best interest of the client and getting the most exposure, and overall for the business too. It
makes sense, but not everybody wants that with privacy reasons.
Right. So I do agree that that the consumer should have choice, as they always should. As with a lot of these rules changes and industry changes we've seen a lot in the past few years, it's consumer focused, and that's one of the things I loved about being at Coldwell Banker is I feel like most of the time they're making decisions for what they think is the best interest of the consumer, not just the company and
not the bottom
agents.
line, right?
But I've started to have a different take on it because I was always, hey, Clear Cooperation is the best thing. It's best for new agents to be able to come in and have access to all the inventory. Right. It's best for the consumer. The most exposure you have, the best position you are in terms of negotiation.
You mean marketing?
Yeah.
Right?
Marketing. The more eyeballs you get, the more buyers you get,
exactly.
the higher.
It helps. It's a win-win for everyone.
The higher value you're going to get. But it's been really interesting to think from another standpoint with the internet age and the digitization and AI and just so much data out there. I mean, just in general, in the last few years, the amount of times where I've gotten a call a few months after selling a house and it's, hey, you listed this house. I'm the buyer for that house. And can you take the YouTube video down? Can you take the pictures down off of Zillow, which I don't own Zillow, so I can't. But all this stuff. So all of a sudden, and then I've also done a few off-market deals recently where it's people that, all right, high net worth individuals, maybe it's not their primary residence, they have expensive things in the house, they don't live there full time, they're worried about security and safety or even their own personal privacy if they're higher profile. So it made me realize, you know what, there are lots of scenarios where it could make sense to, and some of these people, they don't need every last dollar out of that sale too.
Right.
They want to make the most money possible, but for some of these people, their privacy and security might be worth more than the extra couple of bucks they can get on the sale.
Well, it's especially in this market today, right, where their sellers are pretty much controlling.
So that's what I've been talking about recently. It's going to be right now.
It's good for the
it
seller.
works.
It works, right?
Right now, these off-market listings, these exclusive listings,
Right.
these pocket listings,
It makes
work.
sense.
It makes sense. When who knows when that is? When the market shifts, I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, to more of a buyer's market. We're going to go back to where everybody was like, I want to make sure I'm on every portal, that I'm appearing on the first page of the searches. So it'll be interesting to see, number one, how things shift when that market eventually shifts. But I think the biggest tell will be how long the market stays the way it is. If the market stays a seller's market for a long time, there'll be time for a lot of these systems that these brokerages are putting into place and this way of doing business to kind of solidify and maybe survive into a shift into a buyer's market. But if it shifts to a buyer's market sooner, then I think this will all go out the window and we'll go back to where we were.
Well, it's what it is. So spinning off of that, what are some of the mistakes that you see buyers and sellers making in today's market, right?
Some of the biggest mistakes that I see buyers and sellers making in this market is not preparing for their move up front enough.
Okay.
I want to take a minute to really formulate my thoughts, because in the past, in more of a buyer's market, it's been, you got plenty of time to react, you have time to negotiate, and really it's been, when it's more of a buyer's market, it's try to make the other side make the first move.
Right.
When you negotiate, they would say, let the other person throw out the first offer.
Not today. It's sticker shock. Like,
Well,
no, it's not enough. You need more.
Right. Well, and I have a lot of, especially buyers, saying, all right, well, if I make this offer, will I have another opportunity to improve my offer?
Right.
And the response is, well, you always technically have the opportunity until it's under contract. Even if that seller says, hey, another offer came in, we're going to take it.
Right.
We don't care what your other offer is. You still have an opportunity to make another offer.
Right.
But I really stress you only have one shot to make a first impression.
Right.
And that goes for a lot in this market. I'm not seeing a lot of these bidding wars getting won by a long shot. A lot of them are really close, and a lot of times it comes down to reading between the lines. I don't necessarily know if vibe would be the right word, but there's a lot of things that happen between contract and closing. Right. So a lot of times it's, hey, these offers are all on paper similar.
Right.
Who's going to stick to their word? Who's going to give us the least amount of trouble? And you can't really put that in a contract.
Right.
So you really have to sell your buyers in this market as an agent, and you really have to, put your best foot forward. And even a lot of times these sellers' agents, letting them make the first offer isn't always beneficial, because that works when you're negotiating and you're the only game in town.
Right.
But I've had negotiations with agents that I know, that I trust to be great agents and have a great relationship with, and sometimes they actually think that they're helping me out by, quote unquote, giving me insider scoop. I found sometimes relying on that has backfired and hurt us, because they know what their seller wants. So when you're negotiating one-to-one, it's, hey, what does your seller really want? What's going to get this deal done?
This is the first time I heard someone say in the analogy you put it in, where you're giving me information that's not working.
Right, right. Well, because you know what your seller's looking for. So some of these agents are saying, what is your seller really looking for?
Right.
Right. But, if I come to you and say, if we're going out for ice cream and you say, hey, what do you want? And you're like, oh, I'd really love a banana split.
Right.
And then you go and open up the menu and you're like, wait a minute.
There's no banana split. Yeah.
There's the banana split. Well, look at this other Sunday.
Yeah,
this
right,
looks
right.
awesome.
Right.
So, if I call that agent, hey, this is the number we're really looking for, and these are the terms we're looking for, great. We give you exactly what you want. And then 5 minutes later, another offer comes in offering stuff that you didn't ask for, but now you're like, hey.
It looks good.
I didn't realize I could ask for this.
And why not take it, right? Because it's the best.
And then it's like, hey, this is better than what I thought I could get. I'm taking this.
Right.
See you later. And I don't want to screw around. So let's stick with that let's stick with that offer. So even well-intentioned sellers and sellers agents that are trying to work with you, they don't always know what they're looking for until it's in front of them.
Yeah, well, so I mean that goes to your point, right? Where you have to hope, because you're at a point where you're having these conversations because you trust them, right? Because you took the information that they gave you,
right?
And you took it back to your client, and you're like, okay, this is what it is. I know this agent because such and such year he's been doing this,
right?
And we're comfortable, but you're trusting, but it's not trust at this point.
They're
right?
not lying to you, but
right.
they might not have all the information either.
Right, exactly. So it's like trust and hope that the information that was given,
right?
You can
and on
make
the flip side, they might have
decision.
given that information to somebody else,
right?
And it's my job as the buyer's agent to go in and say, I don't care what you were asking for. I'm going to give you a better offer than that.
Right.
Here are the things that you should have asked for that you didn't, and once you see them, you're going to take our offer instead of this other. So you really have to be proactive in this market,
right?
And then on top of that, when I first got into the business, it was a lot of like, hey, go to your company training, follow this system,
right.
Do this, and you'll be successful. The textbook went out the window in 2020.
Yeah.
You can't.
A lot of things went out the window in 2020.
You can't,
right.
So a lot of these agents that have made a very good career off of just follow the systems, follow the trainings, they were lost when COVID hit and there was no training and there was no user manual and there still isn't. The industry's changing so much so quickly. You really have to think for yourself and be ahead of it because, just following the textbook doesn't work anymore.
Would you say that's one of the obstacles we're dealing with today's market?
I like to think of it as an opportunity, actually.
Okay.
I'm a little crazy. I enjoy this. I enjoy this business.
I feel it. Like you get really into the trenches.
I'm competitive.
Right.
I'm competitive. I grew up as a competitive hockey player.
Right.
So I don't want an easy transaction. I want to win. I want to show my value. I want to exceed expectations.
Okay.
So to me, all these changes in this market, yes, they're very challenging. A lot of my colleagues are running around complaining, and I'm like, number one, these are opportunities to set myself apart from the competition, but they're opportunities to show my value, to really help my clients win.
Right.
I mean, listen, in a previous market where you've got, hey, if you follow the textbook, you'll be fine. All right, well, then you get into a competitive situation. It's all right, we're all just following the textbook. Everybody's on a level playing field.
Right.
There's so much opportunity to get ahead, to be more cutting edge, to think outside the box, to structure deals ways that I would never thought of structuring them before. And as a mortgage guy, you see that too, in terms of back in the day, it was, here's my pre-approval. I hope it's with my mortgage guy, but if it's not, this is the only offer on the table. Right. So, all right, I don't like this mortgage company, but we're taking it. Or, hey, it didn't appraise. I guess we're going to have to lower the price.
Right. There's so many tools that some of these mortgage companies have now that they can help navigate that one person purchasing that home. So
and not just the tools within the company, but the tools within the brain
of
you as the mortgage professional.
Simplifying it for that person, right?
Simplifying it and thinking outside the box. Before it was just, hey, I want you to go with one of my recommended mortgage lenders because I know they did a thorough pre-approval.
Right.
Now it's no, because this is going to be my partner throughout the offer, negotiation, and transaction. I want to have a conversation with you, the mortgage lender, before we go look at houses.
Right.
So we can have a conversation and get a full understanding of what tools are in the toolbox of that client.
Right.
I'm not necessarily calling you and saying, hey, they said this is their budget. Can they afford more?
No.
Because I'd like to upsell them, but more like, what can they do?
Right.
Same type of thing. They might say, hey, Ryan, this is my budget. This is what I want to spend. This is my pre-approval, which is great. And I'm not trying to get them away from that. But when it comes to presenting an offer and negotiating in this market, there's so many different ways to structure an offer, not just price, but terms as well.
Right.
And so I want to be working with a partner that I know is thinking outside of the box, that we can work together and brainstorm. All right, here's what we think is the best strategy for this customer that they might not have thought of.
Right.
Someone might come and say, hey, Jimmy, I want a pre-approval for this for $1 million with 20% down.
Right. I'm not just going to give you that. I want to.
Is that what's best for you?
No, right. You may not know. Maybe 10% putting down on $1 million purchase may be better for you.
Right.
Maybe advantageous. Maybe doing a line of credit of one of the products that we have, the all-in-one, may be better for you. or maybe buying down the rate may be better for you as a temporary buy down. There's so many different arsenals that we have.
Maybe you should put a higher down payment to make your offer look more attractive, and maybe you can restructure it later.
Right.
Maybe as much as you don't want to pay your agent's commission, you want the seller to pay your agent's commission.
Right.
Maybe you're on that threshold of the mansion tax, and you could structure that deal differently to keep the purchase price below $1 million to save you the mansion tax, and somehow fund that another way.
Whatever we can do to save money. And the good thing about where we're at, you can always recast your mortgage, right? So if you can do certain things to structure, you don't like the numbers up front, you can apply more towards the principal and recast it and get the rate that you're looking for.
But the point is, you and I can have a conversation that we may not be able to have directly with the customer right off the bat because they don't know what things to look for. So that's really an important relationship to have throughout the transaction.
I'd agree.
And then also, even once you get into these, listen, in this market, a lot of the things you're promising in your offer is taking on a lot more risk as the buyer. And that could be things like, waiving your appraisal, structuring in different down payments, things like that. And being able to navigate those things, not only to understand them, to be able to present your best offer, but then if you run into a jam, being able to easily overcome that obstacle.
Makes sense.
Because I find a lot of times when buyers are not getting their offers accepted, it's because they're not making their best offer.
Right.
Not because they're making their best offer and it's not good enough, because they think they're making their best offer, but it's not their best offer.
You always have to give them enough options. Speaking of the mansions that you talked about that, I talked about this last week on Facebook. $1 million.
Mansion,
right? Like, are you
everybody in New
serious,
Jersey is
right?
living in mansions.
Yeah. So I've heard some conversations where they're trying to revisit it, actually add more to it. I think they're nuts for doing that because given where we're at with local taxes and homeowners insurance premiums, they've gotten up too, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you're asking me to do more with less.
Right.
Given where we're at with the economy, like, what do you want me to do, right? So what would you like to see happen with the mansion tax? Do you think they should increase?
Well, not just the mansion tax, with taxes, fees, tax incentives in general. We're in a tricky spot here in New Jersey. One of my biggest challenges is a lot of my clients are looking at national home sale statistics.
Right.
If you're looking nationally, it's shifting. It's still a seller's market, but it's shifting more in the buyer's favor. Prices are leveling out. When you look locally in New Jersey, I've seen the prices go up faster and the competition get higher in the past few months than I have since things took off in 2020.
I blame Florida and Austin, Texas.
And so I think one of the biggest problems and biggest things we hear about is you have some of your largest homes that would appeal towards families, towards people with the most people living in that home. They're being occupied by the fewest amount of people.
Right.
You've got the largest homes in the area, the large 4 or 5 bedroom houses being occupied by empty nesters whose kids are out of the house. But there's no incentive to free up that inventory. If anything, so it's interesting because you hear a lot of the government talk about, for a while they're talking about other things that aren't part of the problem. But even lately, we've been hearing government officials show more of an understanding of where the problem lies, which is an inventory problem, a supply problem.
Right.
But a lot of what they're doing at a government level is actually making the problem worse rather than make it better. It sounds nice to say, hey, we're going to give first-time buyers a credit or money. All you're doing is inflating the price.
Yeah, you're giving them credit. What are you going to do with it?
You're going to give them money.
Right.
Everybody's got that same money.
Someone's going to capitalize.
The prices are going to go up.
Right.
What you need to do is you need to not incentivize the buyers and help the buyers. You need to incentivize the sellers to free up more inventory.
And developers.
Give
them some tax incentives.
But that's only so helpful in New Jersey because there's only so much land to build on. So nationally, I agree with you, but locally, I think what needs to be done is 2 things. We need to incentivize the most, and not to bash the boomers. I mean, hey, if I was in a nice big house and
my 2.5,
and my mortgage was paid off,
right,
or my rate was low and my taxes were low and I was getting the senior property tax credit,
right,
I wouldn't be moving either. So it shouldn't be villainizing these people for taking advantage of these, great incentives to them.
They worked for it.
It should be creating incentive for them to make the moves that we want them to make. Things like the mansion tax. Well, if most homes are selling for above $1 million now, the mansion tax, well, yeah, that's going to disincentivize the buyers a little bit, but you talk about like the realty transfer fee.
Right.
That's the thing in New Jersey. Right now you're hovering around 1%. They're talking about increasing that to 2% for homes sold between $1 million and $2 million, and up to 3% for homes above $2 million. That's a cost to the seller. So that, you're already talking about, all right, well, if I have a 4,000 square foot house and you want me to move to a townhouse, which is more suitable towards my current situation.
You're not making it attractable.
All right, I've got a 2.5% mortgage rate, or my mortgage is paid off. I'm getting a property tax credit on top of that. But now, so if I move, not only will my mortgage rate go up if I'm taking on a mortgage, but now this realty transfer fee is higher. So that's an additional cost of selling. And as much as, especially the younger generations might not like seeing, hey, here's more money we're throwing at these sellers who, bought their house for $50,000 and now they're selling it for $2 million.
Yeah.
You can't punish them and force them to do things. You need to incentivize them to do things you want to do.
You can't disincentivize them. They need smaller.
You can't give penalties. You need to give rewards.
Right. I wish there were smarter heads at these.
So, some of the ideas I floated around just for fun, I'm sure there's a lot of downsides that I haven't considered with these things, but, things like rather than giving a property tax credit to someone over the age of 65, why not give some sort of a property tax credit for every bedroom in your house that is being occupied?
Right. Or, to help out a child tax credit, right? Help out new first-time home buyers with children moving in, because pretty much they're buying into the school system.
Right. Give a credit to the people who are utilizing.
Right.
Give some sort of incentive for people finding a house that's the right fit for them.
Right.
You have too much of a mismatch in this market. People trying to get into homes that fit their lifestyle. People in those homes don't match their lifestyle.
No.
But there's too much of a barrier towards moving. More of an incentive to say, hey, if you've got this many people living in the house, let's give an incentive for you to buy the house that fits, rather than an incentive for the person who's in that house that doesn't fit their lifestyle to stay in that house.
Right. Well, when you deal with, we're not going to talk about it so much, but when you deal with government, sometimes you like to know, what are you thinking about? Because what you're doing, you're not making it.
Well, and then the other big potential solution is in terms of zoning. But with the tax credits and with the zoning, it really comes down to most of our laws and rules and incentives based around property ownership.
Right.
Benefit property owners, current property owners.
Right.
So the same thing with zoning. No one wants you to go build an apartment complex in their backyard if they're in a single family house on an acre.
Which they've been doing through the whole COVID thing, right?
Yeah.
Some of these town council meetings,
they get heated.
Oh man!
But at the end of the day, the people who have the say and have the vote are the homeowners.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we'll forget about them and just force them into doing something they don't want to do, but a lot of the rules benefit the existing owners and don't benefit the people, the would-be homeowners and the want-to-be homeowners.
On a lighter note, so you're a golfer, right?
Yes.
You like to play golf. We talked about that a couple of times. Which golf community are you part of?
So I'm a member at Springbrook Country Club.
Okay.
That's in Morristown.
Right.
I've been a member there for 8 years now.
Nice.
So I'm very involved there. It's a beautiful club, really, really fun, great community.
Okay.
I take part in a lot of the activities. I've been on the membership committee for many years now. So,
Okay.
And then a few different other committees within the club.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So what is some of the rewarding what's the most rewarding home sale or purchase you've been part of?
That's a tough question for me.
It should be.
Because I've had so many rewarding home sale and purchase transactions.
Right.
Especially over the last few years. Because like we discussed, to me, rewarding is a win. Like,
right.
Yes, I get rewarded. I get paid a commission.
Right.
I get paid for doing the work that I do. But I like a challenge. Reward to me is...
The tougher the deal, the better it is.
Yeah, the tougher the deal with the best,
Okay.
Most advantageous outcome for my client. And with a lot of the changes and challenging market we've seen over the past few years, there's been so many opportunities to kind of exceed expectations.
Right.
That I really have had a lot of deals that have been rewarding. But I'd say probably the most rewarding deal, and most of the opportunities to have a rewarding deal have really been building a lot of trust with my clients. A lot of these little tricks that I do, I have to really get comfortable with the client first, because a lot of it is trust me.
Right.
This is going to seem scary. You're going to be taking on a little extra risk for a bigger reward, and I know what I'm talking about. And we have to act quickly. And there's not enough time for me to explain this entirely to you.
Okay.
So you got to trust me.
Right.
So that's why I spent a lot of time up front. So this was a really rewarding transaction in so many ways. It's a good friend of mine who's now a good friend. It's someone I knew from college, kind of lost touch with as a real estate nerd. A few years ago, I was going through the tax records and noticed that they were living in Morristown. They're not from New Jersey.
Right.
So I started hitting with some of my marketing, reached out and said, hey, I see you're living in Morristown. We should get together. A real nice guy, but he's very particular. It wasn't like, oh, hey, nice to see you in real estate. I'm going to hire you because I know you.
Right.
So he was very, very particular in selecting a real estate agent. It grilled me really hard. And so just getting selected from someone who I knew and I knew was so particular was rewarding in and of itself.
Right. He put you through the ringer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I love it. I love the tough questions from people. Okay. But in this market, we haven't seen in years really a market where you could. He was upsizing. Right. And so in the past, most upsizers would do a property sale contingency. Right. Hey, I'm going to make an offer on the house that's contingent on me selling. Then I'm going to put my house on the market. And if for some reason I can't sell my house, I can back out. Right. Or if I don't sell it in time, the closing gets delayed. So in this market that we've seen for years, you really can't do that. So there's lots of different ways that you can bridge that gap. And this client was in a fortunate enough situation that they could purchase before selling, which is great. The challenge of that is a lot of your decision in deciding where you're moving and what your budget is based on what you're going to sell your home for.
Right, right.
So there's a big swing that can happen in either direction when you're doing that. When you're buying,
timing's important.
Well, not only is timing important, but if you're going to purchase first and then sell, if you end up spending more on your purchase and selling for less than you thought, wow, that gap between that.
That's why I say timing is important, right?
Big, but on the flip side, if you get a better deal on your purchase than you thought and you sell for more than you thought, wow, I thought I was going to spend all this money to upsize, and turns out I only spent a little bit. And so that's how this one kind of panned out on the purchase end. That alone, I felt like was a very big success. We looked at a bunch of houses. We looked at this one house that was perfect for them. And just like I had mentioned, where there is no textbook and the rules are changing a lot and you really have to be ahead of the strategy, the listing agent had been around for a while, was kind of operating off of the old playbook. They put the house on the market on a Monday. And I thought it was priced very attractively, let's say. I thought it was underpriced a little bit. Right. They put the house on the market on Monday at a lower price than I thought they should have. And most buyers come out on the weekends. And most houses that are sold in this market, the buyers come out on the weekends. The sellers don't put the house on the market till later in the week.
Right. So like
let's
Wednesday,
get everybody
Thursday,
through.
Friday.
Let's get everybody through. We're going to wait for all the offers to get in.
Right.
This case, they put the house on the market on a Monday. And
so you was combing that MLS.
Yeah. So I said, listen, I know you're busy with work. You're a busy guy. We need to get in here today to see the house.
Right.
And if you like this house, once they saw the house, he said, all right, I love this house. Like, we got to get it.
Put your best foot forward.
I said, all right, this house is underpriced. You got to trust me here. Because most buyers in this market say, let's wait through the weekend. Let's wait for the seller to set a deadline, see if there's any other offers.
Well, sometimes it depends on where they're at with the search, right? Some people got beat up so much. They're like, yo, I love it. I'm buying it. Let's take it, right?
So in this case, it was, all right, this house I think is underpriced. Most of the buyers are going to come in this weekend. What do you think we have to pay for this house? All right, well, if you make an offer today, I think you could get it for this price. If you wait till the end of the weekend, you're probably looking at about $100,000 more.
Ooh.
And it sounds like nonsense.
Right.
But I'm like, trust me. Today's Monday. You need to get the offer in by Tuesday.
Right.
So you can start attorney review, and you have to be out of attorney review by Friday afternoon. I said, this only works if you get out of attorney review by Friday afternoon.
24 to 72
we're
hours.
gonna get
Right.
we're gonna get this house is gonna be flooded with people over the weekend. They're gonna get other offers, and then all of a sudden it's gonna be a bidding war.
Right.
And so they trusted me. I said they offered the price that I told them to offer. They came in strong from the beginning.
Right.
No negotiating. Selected the attorney that I told them would get it done quickly. And by noon on Friday, we had our offer accepted. By noon on Friday, we were under contract.
Wow.
And then Friday afternoon, I got a call from the listing agent saying, man, I'm getting so many angry calls from people, from agents who were planning on showing this house this weekend. And then they saw it go under contract
on it.
and they missed that opportunity. So, I think we probably saved them at least $150,000 on that purchase by getting in before the competition. I think they got a really good deal on that purchase. And then icing on the cake, we put their house on the market and sold it for a few $100,000 more than we were anticipating.
Okay.
So all of a sudden that upsize, we were initially looking at selling their house for about $850,000 and purchasing for about $1,450,000. And I can't remember the exact numbers, but I believe we ended up at the $1,350,000, $1,375,000 purchase price, and we ended up selling their house for $1,050,000 about.
Well,
So-
see, I tell folks all the time, right? The startup is where you get the percentage gap. It's huge because someone's trying to move in. They're looking at a starter's home. Where the move up, it's hit or miss. It depends on.
Well, when you're budgeting that upsize and a bunch of that cash is
Right.
coming from the sale of your previous home,
Right.
but you're buying before selling, you're taking a gamble there. You don't know what you're going to sell for.
Hey, I mean, look, it happens. Look, in this case, they won, right? We have to appreciate that you knew what to do.
Right.
You provided your guidance, the trust.
Well, it's
Right,
trust
that's
and
right.
it's risk. It's
Right.
understanding. It's risk management. It's understanding risk.
Right.
I think a lot of people nowadays want to negate risk. They think that there's a way to get rid of all risk.
Well, it's if you got to understand where they're coming from too, right? When
Right.
you're looking at something that number every month, and they're like, I have.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal, right?
It's a big deal. I'm not saying you should throw all caution to the
Right.
wind and just take blind
Well,
risks.
you're leaning a little bit more on
When you
now.
understand the risk, it
Right.
is less risky.
Right. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
That
makes sense.
if you're a stockbroker and you understand the stock market, you might be taking the same risk as I am, but you understand the risk you're taking. You've calculated for that. Whereas if you don't know what
But you
you're
can buy
doing-
options though. You can buy to cover, right?
And that's managing your risk.
Right.
It's taking risks where it makes sense. It's taking risks that the market may perceive to be a larger risk, but you have a more thorough understanding and realize is a smaller risk.
Fair enough. So you do a lot of things in Morris. What are some of their favorite restaurant? Well, cuisine, right? Because I do at the restaurant. People are like, no, don't say that because you're gonna out me out, right? So, what are some of the favorite cuisines you like in Morristown?
So this is one of my least favorite questions that I get all the time, and I'm not faulting you.
But cuisine, right?
Right.
Because
Well, not just restaurants, but cuisine in general. Morristown's a great downtown.
Right.
Got a lot of restaurants,
A
and everybody's
lot.
favorite topic is where do you go to eat. I'm not a big foodie. I love Morristown. Don't be wrong. I like a good meal.
Right.
And if I had to pick a cuisine, my favorite cuisine is Greek or Mediterranean.
Okay.
Because it's healthy. It's a good meal. I like the flavors, but I also feel like I can get up and go do something afterwards without feeling like I need a nap.
Food coma.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But so it's interesting because I know being in a town like Morristown, so many people look to the bar and restaurant scene, which I think is great that we have, and I do
It's
enjoy
building
it.
by the day.
I do enjoy it every now and then, but I've got 2 young kids. If I'm going out to eat, it's usually a local pizza. Basically, most of the time when I'm picking a restaurant, it's where can I go that my children can climb in the seats and no one's going to get mad. So that's my favorite restaurants.
Okay.
But there's so much more to do in Morristown than just the food scene. For me, I like to do stuff. So I love going for hikes, going to play golf, just going
Right.
for a walk around town. For me, going into town isn't necessarily going out for a drink or a meal. It's
Right.
going to the toy store, going to the parade,
Okay.
things like that.
They do a killer St. Patrick's Day parade.
Oh, one of my favorite days of the year. The St. Patrick's Day parade and the Fall Festival are my
Right.
2 favorite things in town. So I love it. I'm a nice, easy walk into town.
Right.
Kids love the St. Patrick's Day parade. I'm fortunate enough to have some friends who have their offices right on South Street.
Okay.
So we go and watch the parade from the skybox.
Nice. That's
so to
what's up,
speak.
man.
So I stick my kids in the wagon. I pull them into town. And we go enjoy the parade and then jump around to some different parties throughout town.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Ryan, if someone's looking for you, where can they find you?
So I'd say the best way to find me is my Instagram.
Okay.
My business Instagram, where you can find a lot more of my business minded stuff, is at Bruen Real Estate,
Right.
Bruen. I think that's the best way to get in touch with me. You can direct message me, but also you can kind of look at a lot of the content I'm putting out there and get a flavor for who I am first before reaching out to me.
Yeah, Ryan is data driven. There's a lot of information that he puts out there when it talks about the what's going on with the market, how are things moving from one week from another, right? Given what's actually happening percentage wise, so you get an idea. What does that look like to you? So when you when you're available to look for home search, you know what you're dealing with because he's giving you enough statistics around that home to evaluate what makes sense or what can you do to get in front of the deal, like you did prior to the story you shared.
Yeah.
Right? Leveraging that risk because of how much analysis you've put into what's going on in today's market.
Right. So I'd say if you want to get in touch with me, my Instagram page, at Bruen Real Estate, or my website, bruinrealestate.com. I know today's consumer doesn't want to just call a realtor and they get sold a sales pitch. I've got a lot of information about my markets, my analysis, how I work, things that I do, and then easy ways to message me through there once you've really gotten a flavor for me.
You on YouTube?
I am on YouTube.
Okay.
I'm not super active on YouTube. It's more of my Instagram focused content. I repost on YouTube, so it's not really formatted great for it. But I have created the content, so I might as well put it there as well.
Let's grow on that YouTube page.
Yeah, there's so many different outlets.
Things,
so Instagram's kind of my primary, and then
I love Instagram too, but YouTube,
I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, I try to put myself out there as much as possible, so so the consumers can come find me,
right,
rather than me throwing stuff at them.
Nice. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. Let's talk about it. Viewers, find me on your favorite streaming platform. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Like I said, just type in Let's Talk About It by Jimmy, and I'm here to represent what we got going on. Let's talk about it when it comes to real estate and home ownership.
And
right?
Jimmy, thanks for having me. Like I said, I always love having conversations with other real estate professionals that enjoy thinking outside the box and thinking for themselves.
Man, the energy you have when it comes to data is amazing. Man. So I had to have you on, right? And like I said, I think a lot's going to be happening, right, because of the market that we're in, right?
So
I'm pretty sure the information you always provide, you're going to start to see a lot of changes.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be
a fun ride.
Because you love the challenge.
I like to win.
Yeah, there you go. All right, man. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thanks a lot, Jimmy.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Hey, listeners, are you looking to improve your home comfort and save on your energy bills? Let's talk about Seal Power. They've been awarded Energy Star Sustained Excellence Award seen on Good Morning America, the New York Times, and World News. Seal Power is dedicated to keeping your home cozy while saving you money. Check out their website for tips and incentives and more at CIELPOWER.com. Stay comfortable and save with Seal Power, where comfort meets efficiency. Follow them on Instagram for updates and more, and let's talk about it as well. Thank you.